Well, at the moment we are expecting that on the 9th of March the parties in the conflict of Syria are convening in Geneva for another round of peace talks. As far as I know, the parties will not meet directly, but Stefan de Mistura will shuttle between them. I call them a new round of talks, but I think we have to see it as a process in which all of these talks are combined, and Stefan de Mistura has now chosen for a moment to have a more public moment in which the parties come together, which puts pressure on them, also to show for the outside world that they're trying to accomplish something. And I think that is an important moment. At the same time, it also has to runs the risk that it's used to the advantage of the parties themselves and not so much in the advantage of peace in Syria by, for example, promoting their own interest either to the international community or through the media to the people who back them. The Russian intervention caused the fact that Assad is willing to go to the negotiation table. Before the Russian intervention, Assad was losing. Not fast, but he was losing the conflict. With the Russian support, he is now more powerful. At the same time, apparently the Russians have told him, you have to go to the negotiation table. We are not here for the long run. The military pressure, the mounting military pressure, also led to the opposition having more interest or more need to go to the negotiation table as well. And that's what we call a mutual hurting stalemate. But of course, a mutual hurting stalemate is only one condition, and now the next steps are more about how you're willing to accept one another as viable, legitimate negotiation partners. That is really necessary to be able to commit and have trust in the other party, and there they are very far away from that moment to recognize each other as such. And we, as the Clingendael Institute, also have trained multiple times opposition forces, especially in that element. How do you look past positional bargaining, past the position, I want to get rid of Assad, but also what your interests and needs on a deeper level are, how you can secure them for your community, separate from the way of war, which is the current narrative. So we have trained, for example, the High Commission for negotiations in Riyadh, and we have also trained several times Syrian women groups, who are also invited by Stefan de Mistura as one of the few groups who are organizing themselves as a civil society across the different factions in the Syrian population, including people who are more supporting the regime and not only the opposition forces. Well, I think first of all we need to be realistic, no matter what. So if this new round of talks is successful, this will still be a process of months, really months. We should not forget that they have to struggle with really complicated issues, which are on the one hand complicated because it's writing a new constitution, for example, which is always complicated, but at the same time it's also complicated because it deals with questions of justice, what to do with perpetrators of crimes, for example, in the conflict. That is not an easy thing to solve. So these are very big challenges ahead, and that's even separate from the geopolitical structure in which the Russians are trying to use the Syrian conflict also into their own advantage, in putting pressure on the Americans, unfortunately their struggle for land, which was reason why in January the talks were stalled, was very successful. So that means that it looks like the Syrian army together with the Russians can actually get even more ground from the opposition forces, and that means that there might be a risk that the mutual hurting stalemate is no longer in existence because they can win the war on the battlefield.